What's up, everybody? It's Joe with at CBB DFS, wearing some new gear. Happy about that. It's December 1st. Before this slate tips off, I want to get a little video out to you guys. Video, it's a new medium for us. We had a YouTube channel. We haven't used it. So maybe this is some way we can use it with a little showdown showcase. I'm going to take this time to quickly go through the big showdown tonight between Kansas and Kentucky, the game that everyone wants to see, right? Kansas and Kentucky. This one's going to be a good one. As of right now, as of the time we're recording this, Kansas is a favorite by 4.5. The over-under sits at 147. Bird has written this full game up on our site because it's part of the main slate. For Kansas, they took a big loss to the Zags, but they bounced back with a nice win over St. Joe's. In both games, they've scored 90 points, but the defense is really their calling card, and it needs to show better than it did against the Zags. It definitely did against St. Joe's. Let's see if that trend continues tonight. Also, little news, and again, like I mentioned, Bird wrote this up for our daily slate. McCormick is banged up, so we're going to be watching his status throughout the evening before this game tips off tonight at 8:30 Central, which is where we're at. On the Kentucky side of thing, comparing the slate from the showdown to the main slate, there's a lot more value on the main slate for the Kentucky guys. That being said, I think we can still find some value for the showdown play tonight. They are coming off this loss to Richmond, but that loss isn't as bad as it sounds. That Richmond team has a lot of veterans, and they're a strong team this year. We're going to hear a lot from them from the A10. So I'll forgive that loss, especially for a team that's starting 4 freshmen. And then in this meeting, the Champions Classic, the last time these two teams met was in 2014, and Kentucky won that game by 32. And as Bird referenced in his article today, that's probably the number of beers that he had after the loss, because they were in attendance for that one. Now, taking a look at the lineups and the rotations right now. Starters are normally getting pretty high minutes. The rotation guys that are listed on here, they're your super subs who are going to get you 10 to 20 minutes a game. And then limited PT are probably flyers, not someone we're probably considering in a showdown unless we got a good hunch or a dart throw. Now, an injury to McCormick, for example, could open up more time for Lightfoot on the Kansas side. So that's something we need to be monitoring. But for Kansas, their starters are going to be Garrett, Thompson, Agbaji, Braun, and McCormick. Braun can really shoot it. We'll talk about him in a little bit when we get into some pricing. For UK, I mentioned they are 4 freshmen here. Askew, Boston, Clark, Fletcher, and Sarr have been starting with Mintz, Ware, and Jackson filtering in that reserve capacity. Probably a couple more minutes there on the UK bench for Mintz, as he's the older player of the two and sometimes brings some stability to that lineup. So without further ado, let me jump into the Kansas side of things, okay? Looking at the pricing here, Marcus Garrett leads the way at 14.7. You can see he's averaging 26 fantasy points per game. Marcus Garrett's a good player, not a big time scorer, but he's a heck of a defensive player. So when you're talking 2 points per steal, if he gets into your captain spot, that's someone who could make a lot of noise if the scoring comes along organically. Christian Brown, again, had the big game last time out. Little more of an outliner. I'm staying away from him. He's 7,600 on the main slate. I'm staying away from him for 13.5 on this slate. Agbaji is one of the more consistent Jayhawks that are on the roster. Pretty easy to fit him in for sure. And McCormick, we talked about. He is day to day. Definitely has some smash potential if he's right, but that's something we'll have to watch. Bird does like the way that Bryce Thompson is progressing. So that's another name to keep into your lineups. Outside of that, I'm not going to get too crazy on the Kansas side. For Kentucky, we flip over here. We see Brandon Boston leading the way for the new team, averaging 17.5 a game. He's also pulling down almost 9 rebounds per game. That is definitely captain worthy if you feeling good about Kentucky. A lot of people think Olivier Sarr is in a spot to smash tonight. He's been relatively quiet, but with McCormick being hobbled and Kansas not really having a strong inside game without him at full strength, that's an area where Sarr could really go nuts. Terrence Clark is another really talented freshman, but he hasn't shot the ball all that well. Isaiah Jackson is someone who comes off the bench, but provides a lot of energy and a lot of length. So he could be in store for some fun plays if Cal gets creative with lineups and tries to counter what Bill Self is doing on the Kansas side of thing. Devin Askew is the freshman point guard. He hasn't shot the ball well yet either, and he's seen a significant price drop. At the same time, I like the price drop. I really do. We talked a little bit about Davion Mintz earlier. Sometimes he comes in and just settles that team down. I think with minutes, this is a really productive player when he was at Creighton. So he's someone who is going to have some nice games throughout Kentucky. And if you stick him in your lineup, I don't think anyone will have an issue with that or scoff at that lineup choice for a showdown slate. Now, when doing a showdown, what I like to do is I like to figure out what my narrative is going to be, and I like to build my lineup accordingly. If I think UK is going to make this a game, don't tell Bird, which I do, I might consider stacking those UK players, especially the guards and Sarr. Sarr at a captain would cost a little bit, but at the same time, if he goes nuts like he should with at best a hobbled McCormick, he's someone who could really elevate a captain spot for sure. You throw in some people like Askew, who's a little underpriced that we mentioned, and then you take your pick of Boston or Terrence, and you can hit on a lot of Kentucky guys. On the Kansas side of thing, we talked about Marcus Garrett. He's a good captain option because of his upside. So keep an eye on Marcus Garrett. I would expect to see him in a contrarian captain spot. He's a little expensive, but man, can he deliver. And then for consistency purposes, I think Agbaji has to be on every lineup just because he's going to go out and be that number 1 or number 2 scorer on every given night for KU. So from there, you can probably find some value on the Kansas bet and build yourself a nice little lineup. All right. Just a reminder, follow us on Twitter at CBB_DFS. We're also on the World Wide Web, CBB-DFS.com. Again, I'm Joe with the team. Check out our content, and we'll be back again. Thank you.